Welcome to another episode of Riding the Bus podcast. We have Jake Reed sitting in for David today as a co-host, special co-host with your other co-host, Bennett Perry. Jake, welcome to the cast.
Good to be here.
Welcome to the new studio.
Yeah,
you like it?
Great.
What
I love
think?
it. Yeah. It's awesome.
Turn my childhood room into a podcast studio.
Yeah, you've done well with the place.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, we could, maybe get some recording artists in here. We could, we could really turn this into something.
Yeah, maybe give the people a tour at some point of this incredible room. The big flat screen in the corner, I think, needs to be
that you compared to the scene in The Office.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best episodes of The Office. The dinner party, just that whole episode.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
totally. So uncomfortable. That whole episode.
Yeah.
Gosh, that is a good episode.
Yeah, it's a great show.
It is. It's one of those shows too that like I can't tell you how many times I've watched it back. Or started it and not finished, but like. It's just one of those shows that's so easy to put on, at night, and if you're trying to fall asleep or something. And I mean, it never gets old to me, and it's like.
Do you have a show, or is that your show that when you're like maybe not in a great mood, or like you just have one of those moments maybe during the season where you're like, I want to laugh right now. I want to feel good. Like, is that a show you go to? Is that your number one show you go to?
I would say so.
The Office?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not like a big binge guy, but like. That show and Breaking Bad were kind of the two. And you know what?
Much different feel.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is last year when we got COVID, and I was home for...
I don't like the way you pointed at me when you said that.
I almost said when you gave me COVID, but anyways.
That has not been proven.
Anyways, so. When I had COVID last winter, Jane and I had started a show called The West Wing. Which is like it's an older show that like our parents probably watched.
Popular,
yeah, it was popular,
show.
But it was great. And I watched I don't know, there's probably 7 or 8 seasons. I watched all of them within those 2 weeks of being home. So that like those 3 shows for me are like the only times I've ever done that. But because I have a hard enough time like falling asleep during the season as is, so like if I'm like glued to like a show I've never seen before and locked in, it's so easy just to press like, all right, one more episode.
It has to fall asleep to a show. It's got to be a show you've already seen before.
Because it's like we know like we could sleep till 2 p.m. Because like we don't have to be at the field till then anyway. So it's like it's easy just to press like next. I was doing that the other night with Ted Lasso. Have you watched Ted Lasso? Awesome show. Yeah. I'm like 3 or 4 episodes in, but like.
Oh, you just started it?
Just started it. Haven't finished it.
But the season finale was this past Friday of the current season.
Yeah, so I was like, man, I haven't done this in a while. I'd gotten to bed tired, watched an episode, and somehow I made it through 3 or 4,
Yeah.
And it's crazy how that happens. It like I don't know, like adrenaline or something.
It's a funny show. Would you say Ted Lasso is a good coach, though?
From what I have watched so far, like said 3 or 4 episodes.
Oh, that's right.
I think he's got some really good qualities that I think you need from a coach. Like to me, I thought it was great. One of my favorite scenes early on in the show is when he got the shower heads fixed.
That was one of my favorite scenes.
I'm like, okay, so.
Because you can relate to that. A coach caring enough about what might seem like a small issue to something. Like the guys in the clubhouse, like, no, this does bother us.
Yep.
And just and that was kind of as not to give anything away as you go, but like that was kind of how he won over the veteran and like the leader of the team. It was like, oh wow, our coach is gonna also kind of he said he's gonna do what he says he's gonna do.
Yeah. And there was the issue of the the equipment guy or whatever getting picked on and
right.
The veteran guy tried to get, the coach to stop it, but the coach, Ted, wasn't going to have that. He was going to have his veteran leader be the guy that put an end to that, so I think he's got...
Just the idea of having a head coach in a sport that has no idea what the sport is.
Right. That would never happen. That is problematic. But like the some of the, I think the personality traits that he has are... It makes for a great character, but I think for a good coach as well. Like think about any good coach you've played for in any sport. Like it makes you want to win games for them. It motivates you to play. And not like you're not just playing for your manager. Like there's a lot of different motivations and reasons to want to win games, but like it makes it a lot easier when you like the guy that's
that's a good point. I didn't really think now thinking back, like all of my favorite coaches, like most of the stuff I liked about them had nothing to do with baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had Alan Mills on, who was one of my pitching coach with the Orioles, and I was telling David about it, that my favorite thing about Millsy is like, I think he's a great pitching coach. He did teach me a lot about baseball, but all my favorite things about him, what I thought made him a great coach, really had nothing to do with the pitching side of it. He just understood his guys. He understood which guys needed this type of coaching and that type of coaching. When their guy just, he wasn't going to ask for a day off, but was just going to give him the day off, or like that type of stuff, or just on the road, picking the right movie, for and like just like so we could all kind of joke around, and what I'm saying, like little stuff like that. You're right, just understanding like the pulse of your team. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and speaking of that, Janie and I were up in Orange County this past weekend, and we got invited to a sort of like surprise party for my old coach in college, George Horton, who I played for 3 years at Oregon. Longtime coach at Cal State Fullerton. But Rick Vanderhook, who was the old Fullerton coach the last, I don't even know how many years, but he reached out to one of our Southern California guys who was an Oregon guy as well, inviting, us to this surprise party Saturday. And so it was cool. Like so Coach Horton retired, and then after he retired, it got announced that he's getting inducted into the ABCA Hall of Fame. I think that's the organization, but Hall of Fame for college coaches, I believe. So he's getting inducted into the Hall of Fame in January, and so they had a surprise party for him. But just thinking of good coaches, I got him toward the end of his career, and just thinking about like. He was one of those guys that was a little older, and had been around for a long time, and delegated a lot of responsibilities to some of his other coaches. So there wasn't a huge load of responsibility as far as like the everyday things in coaching, like mechanics or hitting or stuff like that. But like what he brought to the team were some of those qualities that we were talking about, and like. I've never been told by a coach in my entire career, like he told us he loved us every day, and you believed it, like it wasn't just words. It was like the way that he treated people. It motivated us as a team. We weren't a very good team, to be completely honest, my freshman year, but
they were a new program at that time.
New program. I think we were in our third or fourth season since the program got reinstated, and we just played so well, and I think the way that he coached and the man that he was had a lot to do with that. You just wanted to win for him. You knew he was kind of coming to the tail end of his career, and that he was a new coach at a school, and so I think just the way that he kind of went about his business and treated people, it made you want to win for him. That's the way that he motivated his guys, and so just a shout out to him. Congratulations and awesome.
Congratulations, man. Coach Horton.
Yeah,
I will say, I always say this to people when they ask me, what makes a good coach, and when anytime the conversation comes up about coaches being too hard on players or whatnot, and I always say the number one most important thing is the players can tell pretty easily if your coach genuinely cares about you or not. Mm-hmm. And if he does, and if you feel that, you can put up with a lot more.
Totally.
Where it's like then he's not yelling at me. He cares about me, and he's coaching me, and he expects more from me.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you can tell a coach doesn't care about you, he's like, now he's just an asshole who's yelling at me.
Right.
And he's not trying to help. He's not being constructive. He's not looking for a solution here. He's just yelling to yell. As opposed to most of my favorite coaches at one point or another got into it with me. They just laid into me, and I love them for that.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I knew that he genuinely wanted me to get better, and what he was trying to do was trying to help me get better.
Yeah.
And when that conversation comes up nowadays with coaches, and are coaches too hard on players, or did he take it too far? And I'm like, it really just matters of where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And I feel like the good coaches, I mean, like the coach I know I bring him up all the time on the podcast, but one of the best coaches of all time, Nick Saban, right? Like he yells at his guys on the sideline more than anyone, and every one of those players, I've never heard a former player ever say anything bad about.
Right.
I love that guy, because I know he's trying to help me.
Right.
And you see coaches that yell at their players and you go, yeah, but those guys aren't responding. It's like, I bet the pulse of that team is that they don't feel like
Yeah.
that's coming from the right place.
Yeah. There's a trust, I think, that you have to earn as a coach
Yeah.
to your players. And
That helps. Yeah. If you're Nick Saban, you've won championship after championship.
Well,
it
not only
definitely
that,
helps,
but like I think as a player too, it's like, I think part of those championships is him earning, trust with each and every new team and each and every new player, and it's like that in friendship. Like you earn the right to speak into people's lives. You earn the right to joke around with somebody.
Right.
Like there's a, once you get to know somebody and trust, a little bit about who they are and where they're coming from, it opens the door for things, Like,
there is like, you'll be friends with someone, somebody else says something, about that person. You're like, hey, you don't get to say that about them. I can say that about them.
Right.
They're my friend, and they know I love them, and I'm joking.
Right.
I don't know what your intentions are, so you can't say that about them.
Did you have any coaches who just laid into you all the time, like just yellers?
I wouldn't say all the time. There were, Dom, who, is my pitching coach. You've gone to him too. We've talked about him in the past. Is obviously my favorite coach of all time. He's a huge part of my life. Like, there's, not all the time, but there's 3 or 4 times I can remember I've never been. He still has the 1 through 4 mark of most I've ever been yelled at in my entire, like, in that moment, like, just laid into me.
Wow.
And all those times he was in the right.
Yeah. I can't picture him doing that.
Yeah, I can remember every one of them. And then also probably right behind that, Alan Mills, who we had probably 3 times. We talked about it a little bit on the podcast, where one of them was just a misunderstanding of a situation where I thought we were joking and we weren't joking.
Yeah.
But I would say all the times I've been chewed out or laid into the most, for the most part, have been all my favorite coaches. There's a couple in there where, I didn't think he was a good coach, and I took issue with it for the reasons I listed. But I wouldn't say I've ever been. It wasn't a regular basis, but I've been chewed out a decent amount of times, and for the most part, I would say 90% of all the times I can remember being chewed out, I thought was a positive thing, and I think I was in the wrong, and I kind of needed that to get back to being on the right side of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a coach that was just constantly yelling at you? Because that to me would bother me. We talking about, whether you're coming from the right place or not. Like, yeah, I think if you're just always, it has to be a specific. I think it's easier to be like, okay, I understand where this guy's coming from. I understand why he did that, because he wouldn't be doing that unless he really felt passionately about this.
Yeah.
When you're just always doing it, it's kind of, I feel like that would kind of lose I'm like, oh, this guy just yells to yell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like an anger thing at that point, where it's not like constructive. Yeah. It's just like, do you hate me? Like, do you enjoy being out here at all? Like, or is this all about winning and putting rings on your fingers? Like, we've talked about that before, but like these guys, a lot of these good coaches they want to win, and you have to win. Once you get to college and professionally, like you do have to win to retain your job. But like, I think a lot of times it's sort of a byproduct to, elevating other things, like as far as like preparing these, players and these young men to be fathers, or, or to go, to get prepared to step into the workplace outside of football, because most guys are not going to keep playing,
Well, especially at like the younger levels, especially at college, high school, college.
Yeah. And so, I think there's that, but I had a coach, my high school football coach, Helix is a good football school. And he was really, really tough, on the players. And he was sort of a yeller, temper tantrum type of guy, but, I would say he did a good job of balancing it out. With just, there was a lot of like off field stuff that we would do as a team. He would always have his players over, and barbecue for everybody. And, that's that type of thing where I think he was doing a good job of balancing out. I will say, like in high school, like I was a quarterback, and, he came, I think he was the director of ops at the University of Florida, for a couple years, and learned a lot from, Urban Meyer. He was there with Tim Tebow. And I don't know if he was running this offense. He coached up in LA at a school called Taft for a long time.
I've heard of that for some reason. I don't know.
And had a lot of success up there. So I don't know if he was running this offense up there, but when he came to Helix after he left Florida, this offense was so complicated, and like as a quarterback, like you have to study. You have to know the offense.
Were you the quarterback at Helix?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
I backed up my sophomore year, kicked and punted, and then my junior year I started. But it like I said, it's your responsibility as a quarterback to know not only your position and each and every play, what that entails, but really, like, ideally everybody's, right? Like, and I didn't know. I didn't study ever. I just kind of I was one of those kids that just like relied on my athletic ability, and that showed, and so he was really, really hard on me. And so now thinking back to it, it's like I brought that upon myself,
right.
of like, it's one thing if you're an offensive lineman or a receiver, but like as the quarterback, like you have to know those things, and so I wish I could go back and not only in football, but just like in school in general, and like study and like take school a little more seriously, but like I just didn't, and so it showed up on the field. And then I think it translates into performance because there were so many times throughout the game where I just felt uncomfortable, and it was only because there was something I didn't know, you know, like preparation, that stupid saying, it's so true though, like preparation equals confidence,
right.
Like the more
prepared, a lack of confidence is a lack of preparation.
That premise, it's true, like it's true for anything.
That's why I was never confident in taking tests in high school. I didn't prepare.
Right.
I didn't study.
It is what it is, like it's so true, but I guess it's just things you learn, later in life. And
do you? I'm sure because you were with the Twins for a little bit, but do you remember or know Tom Berdansky?
A little bit, yeah. He was the big league hitting coach.
Well, he was also, because our sons, his son and me were the same age growing up, around the same age. He was my high school. He was a coach at Poway when I was at Poway, and I always remember this. I was my senior year. I had a really good junior year. I don't think I gave up a run my junior year. I was out.
You had a 0?
Yeah, I had a 0. I was out of the pen my junior year because we were really good and all.
How many innings? Like over 20?
Like, yeah, probably like 20, like right around that, probably 20, something like that.
Holy moly!
And then committed to Northridge. Had a good like summer where went to showcases and basically committed before even my senior year started. So was going into my senior year, and I think I was feeling myself a little bit, and it was my first or second start of my senior year. We were at Granite Hills, and I don't even think I was pitching bad. I just think I gave up a couple of runs, like I got my first runs in high school, and he just laid into me. I'll never forget it. And at that time, I kind of went back and forth with him. I didn't love that it was in the middle of the game. I'm still pitching, and was just giving it to calling me out, all this stuff, and like I just never forget that. It was like one of the greatest. Looking back, it was like one of the greatest things for me. And I remember the next day, he came up to me and he talked to me like at practice, what I was going for and what I was seeing. And, I thought you were, he was saying you're usually the type of pitcher, that, is 100% in it and passionate and whatnot. I just wasn't seeing that. I was trying to, kind of bring that out of you again. And I just remember in the moment being so upset that he was doing this in the game and, kind of went back at it with him, which you're probably not supposed to do. But I remember then, like, as time went on, thinking about it and realizing like how valuable that was. And like to this day, I still don't forget that. And like there'll be times during season where like I'll just remember that little message or what he said. I'm like, yeah, that's right. I gotta that mindset. So I don't know. It's just one of those where I was like, for like a little bit, I wouldn't say I didn't like him. I always respected him. But yeah, I was like, fuck that guy type of thing. And then like as you go, you're like, that was actually really beneficial. Yeah, I'm really glad he did that.
Yeah.
So.
There's a cool story that happened right at the end of the season this year. It was like the second to last game of the season for me, and we were in Syracuse, where I finished the season.
It's AAA for the Mets.
Yeah,
right?
AAA for the Mets. And we had a guy on the team in the bullpen who was younger, and he had gotten to AAA pretty quickly. Stud, like. Really, really good stuff. Really confident, and we were getting our butts kicked. And again, it's his first pro season. He was a 2020 draft.
He's already in AAA in his first pro season.
They shot him through, and he earned every bit of it. But we were getting our butts kicked, and guys were going into pitch and walking guys, and it was just one of those games. It was just one of those ugly minor league baseball games. And he he did a good job all year of just kind of like being the young guy, kind of keeping his mouth shut and doing his work, He was a hard worker and had a great, routine and everything. But it was probably the 6th or 7th inning, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just starts going off, just like talking about how, how tired he is of the attitude in the clubhouse. And mind you, we were playing later than we ever had. The team was not very good. But just like starts going off about the attitudes in the clubhouse, the attitudes in the bullpen, how nobody wants to be here, how, sick and tired
Really quick, was he a college guy or did you say that?
College. Okay. Yeah. And just kind of going off on everybody and everybody. And I was just kind of standing there next to him, listening, and everybody started jumping down his throat right away with, well, dude, it's your first year. You don't know what it's like, to play 7 years in the minor leagues and still be in AAA, or you don't know what it's like to be up in the big leagues and get optioned down, like all of this stuff, which is true.
Right.
Like there is truth in that. And I told him that, I'm like, you don't know what it's like. There were a lot of guys in that bullpen who had really good years, who had really good careers, who just hadn't gotten an opportunity yet, And I'm like, you don't know what that's like. You're in your AAA in your first, full season. Right. So there's truth in that. But he went on and on and on and kept going at these older guys and arguing with them. And it was one of those conversations where I was sitting there listening. And I think everybody was, where it's like right there in the moment, everybody's fighting back and frustrated with the guy. But to me, like, it's something that, like, as an older guy, as a guy that's been around for a little while, like, it makes you think about, like how you're carrying yourself around the younger guys, or, to me, it woke me up, and I don't think I had a bad attitude by any means, but like, it definitely opened my eyes to, like, I don't want to be that old salty veteran in AAA, like, I really don't want to do that. And I think in the back of these guys' minds, they were probably thinking the same thing of, like, when you really think about it, a lot of these guys, it still is a really tough situation. You're making, minor league money and you're grinding it out in AAA for so long. And it's a tough situation, by every stretch of the imagination. It's tough, but, like, you're still playing baseball. You still have a uniform. You still have an opportunity to get to the big leagues, and it happens quick, So I think it was kind of a wake-up call. And it was just so interesting. It was so funny that it came from this kid, like this 24-year-old kid who like, he doesn't know, he doesn't know what's coming,
Well, that's why, I would say, like, there's already so much resentment, like, built into a guy being in AAA in his first year. Because I know D-Wash has talked about it a lot. I unfortunately never made it to AAA, but he would say, like, AAA was one of the most mentally exhausting experiences, because everyone there, for the most part, is you've either been a lifelong minor leaguer, just trying to get there, or a guy's been up there, been back down, just grinding to try to get back there. That, somebody in their first year being there, being like, come on, guys, it's not that bad. Yeah. Like, I could see how that, where it's hard not to be the salty guy. It's like, well, talk to me in 10 years. Yeah. When you've been doing this.
And that's kind of what I said to him. I'm like, you're right, because there's stuff that I'm leaving out that I'm forgetting of, like, it wasn't just like, hey, put a smile on, it was stuff like, I think, we could kind of see that. Here's a good example. Like, we had this final stretch in AAA baseball this year. So there were no playoffs because of COVID. So what they did was they did a 10-game playoff at the end of the year. It was 2 5-game series against, 2 different teams or whatever. The winner of those 10 games, whoever had the bet in all AAA, whoever had the best record got, like, a $75,000 bonus. So we heard, and I'm pretty sure that was the case. But it was like, that was their playoffs, So we're playing Buffalo, who had a really, really good team, and they were in contention with Durham, who had a really good team as well, obviously. And we get to the end of the season. So if it were like a tie, say 2 teams went 10-0, they would take the best record. And so Durham and I think Durham was undefeated. They were like 8-0 at the time, and Buffalo had lost 1 game. They were like 7-1. And we saw that there was weather on the last game of the season. It was like supposed to rain all day, like we saw in the forecast or whatever. And we were all saying on like Friday, the last game was Sunday, was like, man, if we win tonight or if Durham wins tonight or whatever, like they clinch. There's no way and then we don't have to play Sunday, right. So that type of thing. Like everybody just wanted to go home, right. Like everybody was rooting like not to have to play. And then, we're talking about that before the game, and then we go out and get our butts kicked, and he's like, hey, like if this is all you're talking about pregame, like what do you expect to happen when you go pitch, So I was like, that's kind of a good point, It
is a good point, but it's just like, it's just one of those things where I hear that I'm like, yeah, man, everyone roots for Rainouts,
right?
Man.
Totally.
It's part of the
especially
business.
the last game of the season. That means absolutely nothing.
Like,
yeah.
Because also, if we're gonna be, if we're talking real here, like he's totally in the right. But how many people are like, it's not even about not wanting to play. It's like, hey, man, it could be that much earlier. I get to see my wife and kids that I haven't seen in a long time. Like, because once you're at that age, it's like, listen, that's why it would be so tough. Like, a young kid in his first year being like, come on, guys, don't root for Rainouts. Let's play baseball.
Yeah,
like no.
Well, and so I totally agree. Like I told him like you have to understand that there is part of this that you just don't get right now. Right. And I told him, I said, I challenge you. I hope you're never in this situation being, 28 years old, 29 years old, grinding it out in the minor leagues without any big league time. But if you are, remember this conversation. And I challenge you to carry that attitude into your 7th year, 8th year, 10th year of professional baseball. I challenge you to carry that into just that part of your career, and so
what do you say to that? Was he accepting of that?
Yeah, at that point, I think he had kind of calmed down, and was accepting of it. And he's like, "You're right." And so it ended up being a good conversation. Yeah. And I mean, how it is with younger guys. It's like there may be some guys on that team that don't really have any good things to say about the kid, but like, at the end of the day, like you look at yourself in the mirror and a lot of stuff that he said or coaches in the past, like you assess that, and that a lot of it was true.
Right.
A lot of it too, it's like, we had a guy, he threw on like the second day of the 5-game series, I think, and he threw 2 innings and punched out 5 in like 2 perfect innings. And he's like, I want to end on that. He's going to be a free agent.
Right.
So a lot of it is it's career stuff too. Like that was one of the coolest things one of my minor league coaches ever did for me. It was the last game of the season in 2017 or 2018. It was a really good year for me in AAA. I had like a 1.8, like pitching really, really well. And I hadn't pitched in like 3 or 4 days. And I'm like, I'm definitely in there today. It was the last game of the season. And he just didn't put me in. And I'm like, he put a couple guys went back to back, and he put other guys in. And at the end of it stunk because I thought I was getting called up. Right. I was like, the only reason of me not pitching right now is like, I can't think of any other reason other than I'm going to the big leagues. And so after the game, I'm like looking down the hallway, for coach. And
you wanted to see me?
Yeah. Never got a tap on the shoulder, never got a call, but, packed my bags on the way out. I asked my pitching coach, I'm like, why didn't I pitch today? And he's like, we just wanted you to be able to take those numbers into the off season. And I was like, I appreciate that a lot, because I was Rule 5 eligible. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Like I appreciate that a lot, like
you see that a lot, not just with like, that happens a lot where pitchers near the end of the year that have, a 1.9, a 2.9, 3.9, you're right at that cusp. It's like, sometimes they don't really want to pitch. It's nice when a coach does that for you. Yeah. Because I've played with guys that they would ask, and like at the time I was like, that's weak. The idea is that you had this on the year. This is part of the year. Like you're good, just keep pitching. But I think as you get older, you realize, especially in those situations, like this has extreme career ramifications. Here that like, and it's. I guess I just see it's not so much, and honestly, it probably depends on the person, if I know them, but it's not so much that, they're worried that they are enabled of going out there and, putting up a 0. It's like, what if it's just like a fluky, sometimes you have outings where a couple blue hits here, they don't count this as an error, and then, I get a 3, something, and then when you're trying to find teams, it's like, wasn't, it just wasn't as impressive looking as, a 2 something or.
Well, to put it into context too, and to put like a money value on it, like when you get to the big leagues and you get to arbitration or free agency, something neither of us have been through.
Right.
But I know from talking to, my agents and guys that have been through it, and to me, it sounds like one of the hardest arbitration, especially
ugly.
Sitting on one side of the table and then hearing your team
bad.
tell you why they shouldn't pay you the money that you want. It's got to be tough.
And then you have to, after that's all settled and there's terror and you hate each other, essentially, or the player hates the team, you got to go play on the team. It's not like you have an option to then go somewhere else.
Right. But what they do is your agency's job is to pull up comparable players and how much they got paid, and the opposition side, the same thing. And so if you have a 2-8 at the end of the season and you go out and you give up 4 runs in a third of an inning, and then your 2-8 becomes a 3-3, that could be millions of dollars, And so in the minor leagues, it's maybe not as big of a deal, but like in the big leagues in arbitration and free agency, when they're looking at those numbers so specifically, it can be the difference in a lot of money, So it's so crazy how all of that works.
Yeah, I had one obviously on such a smaller scale because I was in indie ball, but like my first year in indie ball, I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and obviously you're trying to put up numbers in indie ball to get picked up, and I had pulled my groin at one point in the year, so I missed at least a month. I don't remember exactly how long, but I'd been pitching really well. I think I was leading the league in ERA before that happened, and then after it happened, I was like going to come back, but it didn't seem like it was going to be possible for me to qualify for enough innings to lead the league in ERA. And yeah, it might not be that big of a deal, but the last game of the year, the night before, we had clinched to go to the playoffs, and we had a good staff. I think, at least in talking to the coaches, the understanding was maybe I wouldn't go much so then in a few days I would pitch game 1 of the playoffs. So. I was talking to them, they're like, just, you don't worry about that type of thing. You just pitch. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I'm pitching. I'm doing really well. 3, 4, 5 innings scoreless. They go by. I'm like, okay. If you want me to come back in 3 days, this is
Wrap it up.
6th inning goes on. 7th inning goes on. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? They send me back out for the 8th inning. I'm like, I haven't given up any runs. I'm having a great outing. This is fun. And we were also, the team we were playing, I think they were also trying to clinch a playoff spot, so the place was kind of packed. It was a cool experience, but I was like, why do they keep sending me out there? Get out of the 8th, and it was actually kind of a cool moment. All the coaches, and I get the out, and all the coaches and the players in the dugout I hear were really happy, and we're all clapping and smiles on their face. I'm like, what the hell is going on here, guys? We knew, we found out before the game, if you went 8 scoreless, you'd qualify for the ERA title. In the league, and nice. I was like, yeah, ultimately, does that mean anything? No, but in talking to teams in the off season, does it help being hey, look at this, I was and the fact that the fact that it mattered to them, and and I didn't know about it, but you're yeah, thanks for it's little stuff like that, kind of bringing it full circle of good coaching, where it's just ultimately, and if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have cared,
right?
If I found out after the fact, hey, if you had gone 8. You know what I mean? And they only sent you out for 5, and I'm like, okay, I don't care. Right. It was oh, that was kind of nice that it mattered enough for you to see that happen. How everyone was happy and celebrating. I had no idea what was going on. I was that was actually kind of a cool moment. Obviously not happy to be in indie ball, but little stuff like that, understanding that was going to, and then ultimately did not have a good playoff performance. I had to come back. I had thrown 100 something pitches. But in indie ball. Obviously everyone's trying to win, but the fact that for that moment it seemed like they cared more about, my future and me playing than okay, so if we don't win a playoff game, who cares?
Yeah.
So same thing, you're talking about AAA where, obviously coaches want to win and succeed or whatnot, but the fact that, a coach, a pitching coach, whoever it is, their number one priority and thinking is how do I, help him out the most? How do I have his back?
Yeah.
Type of thing. Yeah. That stuff does matter. It sounds ridiculous because I hate, people looking at their stats and caring about their stats, but like you said, all that stuff matters.
So did you not look at your stats much when you played?
No. I always bothered me that they would put it up.
Yeah.
Places you're pitching and it's up there. So I mean, I could see it, but no, I tried. I mean, probably early, no. And I realized I didn't like being so consumed by I knew if I was pitching well. I knew I'd be I haven't given up many runs recently. I'm sure my ERA is good, but I never knew like what the exact, number would be, type of thing.
So would you like when you were in a stadium, like if you knew maybe where your numbers were, would you try and like not look at it or something?
No, I wasn't. I honestly just didn't care that much about it. I think it was more because some teams would play like they would have the stats on the table, And I think as I got older and played longer, I stopped thinking of it as a negative thing. Like early on, I'd be like, guys, you care about your stats. Like I look down on those people. So when I was on teams, and then even in indie balls, you're around older people, and like those are the teams that would have their stats, on the table. Like they just the media person would print out a packet, and you could see where everyone was. I think I started to kind of understand and respect it a little bit more. Understand that, like, yes, this stuff does matter. I felt like it wasn't helping you have better stats if you were constantly worried about it. So I think it was more just like I'm aware of it, but like I think it was more about the stuff where it'd be like you're leading the league in this. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I can't focus on like, oh, hey, so and so who's in second place only had 7 strikeouts tonight. If you get 10, now you're in the league. I'm like, I can't do that.
It starts to get messy when you start to like bring other people's stats into the equation, because
that's what I did when you had a year in Long Island where I for whatever reason just kind of started striking out more people than I was used to, and was like, I think I was leading the league or doing really well. And sometimes some buddies or just people in the organization be like, hey, you're it's this and this other guy in like Somerset or whatnot. I'm like, I can't like. That's the stuff I'd like actively try to fight against, because I'm like, I can't worry about that. Like I'm aware I'm striking guys out. I know in a game that I've struck a good amount of people out here. But like when you start like when I would play with guys that would literally after every like start every outing look at where their stats were, I was like, that just seems problematic to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting now. Like we talked about the first time I came on, just how much the game has changed, and sort of the numbers that maybe were important to us at one point and how they've shifted to these other numbers. It's become more about pitch performance than it has about actual like game performance, Right. And so I think it's been interesting to see the stat checking shift from ERA and WHIP and stuff like that to more of like what's my vertical break or what's my horizontal break right now,
which to be honest is ultimately what's extremely unfortunate for me is because all the stuff that I was probably best at seemed to now not be much of a priority, and all the stuff now that it was the new priority was the stuff that I wasn't necessarily my best stuff. So it was an unfortunate timing of that switch.
And it's frustrating because you just wonder like when that ends, because there are I feel like there are still guys in the big leagues who are valued for their ability to go out and eat up innings or win, for whatever reason. Every time they pitch they win, and so there's still value in that, but it almost seems like those type of guys are like grandfathered in, maybe they're there and they've proven their worth, in the big leagues, which is important, but like it's just interesting to me, like, of all the places that I was this year, what really came back to me and one of the places that I played was the elevation of winning and performance still being at the top of player development, which I hadn't heard that or seen that in the last few years. Like player development to me, there's this message of throw out ERA, throw out, worrying about giving up runs or whatever, and just focus on your stuff.
Right.
And then the stuff will come, and then the results will come after that. One of the places I played this year, it was that stuff was important. Don't get me wrong. It was very important. But what was at the top of that list was winning games as a team and having success as a relief pitcher, as far as if there's a 1-run game and you come in to pitch, the only thing that should matter is that it remains a 1-run game after you come out. And so to get to experience that again was super refreshing. And then it made me realize why it's easier to have success in those environments because you're winning, like it breeds development, and so it's just interesting. Like I feel like the teams who are doing it at in the big leagues are teams that have figured out this balance of competition and analytics, and still valuing winning in the minor league. Like I look at the Rays. I saw a graphic of the Tampa Bay Rays the other day. I think at every level in the minor, they swept. They had the best records, and they all won their leagues.
Right.
And they're in the playoffs right now, and who knows what's going to happen in that series? But like the last few years, and it's been that way.
I mean, think about this: the Tampa Bay Rays this year were the best team in baseball, or I mean, in the American League.
Yeah,
they're the number one team in a division with the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Blue Jays. Spent a lot of money. Like that's kind of ridiculous.
It is
if you think about it.
Totally.
Like, and how dominant they were. And yeah, now they're playing the Red Sox in a series, and we'll see what happens. And this is off of them being the best team in the American League. Well, it was a shortened season last year, and going to the World Series last year, of a team that, theoretically should not be, if they're there. And we talked about it earlier, me and David, I think early on the podcast, is like the Rays would be a great story. They were just that team that was, making it into the playoffs as a wild card, and, the little engine that could. Like, they are the favorite,
right?
For now 2 years in a row going into the playoffs. Yep. We'll see what happens, but like, yeah, and they're the number one team in the American League a year after losing Blake Snell, who was their guy. Glass now got hurt. Right? Like they're losing guys. It doesn't seem to matter who they lose, left and right. But like you said, they have an operation going that it just seems to be like, okay, bring in the next guy.
Yeah,
and bring in the next guy.
It's incredible. It really is incredible, and
it seems like it should be an easy idea that you want guys to be good at what they do,
right? Not
just have good stuff. And like I've always cared more about how I threw than the stats of it. Like it wasn't so much that my stuff, but like if I was happy with the way I pitched, I didn't really care what happened. Sometimes there'd be games where I thought I pitched really well, just gave up 3 or 4 runs, maybe fluky things happen, or just I'm like, hey, I threw really well. And I've had games where I've given up no runs and maybe even had a lot of strikeouts. I'm like, I didn't like the way I threw there. So I kind of going back to the stats thing, like, yeah, I've never necessarily loved the stats, and I don't think the stats tell the entire story.
Right.
I think the problem I have with the analytics part of it, and this is something I've noticed, I don't know how much playoff baseball you've watched, but it just seems like the analytics part seems to be a big part of teams, how they, what guys they decide to go after in free agency or to build their team around or whatnot, and then throughout the regular season. And then it gets to the playoffs, and it's like, now we need some people that actually perform. And it seems like the teams, obviously the teams that perform are going to win. It just seems like the teams that value what you said more are the teams that are consistently there. And they're teams that value that, and then they get to the playoffs or whatnot. It's like, yeah, but this guy who has the best spin rate, we have in our organization can't get anyone out. And now we're down 6-0 in the second inning of a playoff game. Yeah, we're in a tough spot here.
Were you? How long did it take you this season to buy into the Giants, San Francisco Giants?
I'm not going to pretend that I was heavily invested in this season. It was a tough year for me. I'm okay admitting that. It was kind of the first year where, at least in my mind, I was like, I'm done playing. And I think part of watching a little bit of the year, that itch kind of came back, and I was like, yeah, I want to be out there, So it was a little tough for me to watch games. I don't think it was so much I didn't buy into the Giants. I think I thought at some point, though, that the Dodgers were going to clearly be the best team in the NL West. I don't think I saw them, finishing 107 wins, whatever it was, and outlasting the Dodgers the entire year. I think every time I saw something about the Giants, like, oh, they're 2 games over the Dodgers now. I'm like, there's 3 months left in the season. This is, they're going to end up battling the Padres for the wild card spot. So the fact that they never seem to have any type of dip. I mean, the fact that the Dodgers won 105, 106 games and had to play in a wild card game is ridiculous. So.
Yeah, I saw a stat toward the end of the season that from the time that the Dodgers acquired Scherzer and Turner, they went 38-13 or something. I don't know if those are the exact numbers, but something stupid like that. And in that stretch, they gained 2 games on the Giants. So it's I don't think anybody expected that, And so for me, it was I didn't, I don't watch a ton of baseball either during season, but you obviously we'll see the standings. And you'll hear about, teams like the Giants or whatever, and it did take I think a couple to a few months for people to like. I think everybody kind of thought what you thought, right? Like eventually the Dodgers were going to overtake them, and they obviously didn't. But like to me, like I watched them play a couple games. Like I just lined up, sometime during the season maybe, whereas like they were on TV or they were playing. Maybe they were playing the Dodgers when I was with the Dodgers in the minor leagues or something. But I watched them play a couple times. And then when I was with the Mets, we played them in San Francisco in a series, and watching it, it was. I noticed very quickly like what has led to so much of their success. Like they do have a lot of young guys that have played out of their minds. Like the guy that threw the other night. I mean, that was
Logan Webb.
Oh my gosh. But see,
my thinking when I was watching Logan Webb pitch. I'd seen him a couple times, but my first thought watching him is like, this is not your traditional ace in today's game. Like this is a guy that clearly shoves. He's hard to hit, but like I was like, yeah, his stuff is not like jumping off the screen to me of your prototypical guy that the people are looking for. But I'm like, guys putting up zeros.
It's the pitchability that I think.
It seems like at some point someone's like, hey man, this guy puts up zeros. Right. Isn't that ultimately what we're going for here? Like,
he's not. You're right. He's not the prototypical velocity, force, Garrett Cole type of guy, but sinking it, sliding it, and then
that's
the change
what I mean. Yeah. I mean, like I love the way he pitched.
Yeah.
But no, my point is that it seems like my thought was how many teams could use a guy like this, and how many of those teams wouldn't even sign this guy because he doesn't fit that mold.
And it was funny, like as I was sitting there on the couch watching him pitch. Because I understand like how much, the analytics and stuff are part of the game now. I went on my True Media account, which, it's statistics, video, and like you can dive in really deeply to anybody in the league into analytics. And so I was curious as to like how because I could see that it obviously is sinking a lot. Right. I could see that his slider was really good and see that his changeup was really good. And so for me as a guy like, with, I guess, similar type of movement, I wanted to see how his stuff was moving. So his stuff is like on, the TrackMan analytics is like, it's really, really good.
Right.
But, the pitchability and just the ability to get, he was in jams and he was throwing, 2-0 changeups and he was pitching, that was impressive. But to me, like seeing them play a few times now and then, getting to play against them, Kapler has done such a good job of the Giants have done such a good job of forming that team and the bench, to where they match up so well against whoever they play against. Like if there's a lefty starting, you're getting an all-righty lineup of good hitters, and then as soon as you bring in a left-handed pitcher, you're getting a righty off the bench who's going to come in and help the team. So it was like, to me, it was one of the more impressive displays of like. I guess utilization of a team and a bench, that I've seen in a long time.
Which is kind of interesting. It is maybe one of the reasons I didn't necessarily take the Giants super serious in the beginning is like Gabe Kapler was kind of laughed out of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, he was only there for, I think, a year or two. Like he got fired quickly. And most of the stories that I saw was like, yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. There was multiple times like he forgot to warm up a relief pitcher or something like that. It was just like the way he was talked about. And then I saw when, obviously being a 49ers fan, a lot of the people I cover all San Francisco sports, when he was hired, we're like, I cannot believe the Giants hired, Gabe Kapler. This guy, is a joke, type. Like that was his reputation after leaving Philadelphia after a short managerial stint. So like, yeah, that's why it's interesting to hear like, obviously they're good, but it seems like that, it's such a buttoned up operation. I had a problem with him taking Logan Webb out of game one. And in general, we'll probably disagree on this because we have our biases, obviously a starter and reliever, but I don't know how much you've watched the playoffs, but my biggest issue with baseball now, and especially playoff baseball, is how quick the hook is for starting pitchers.
Yeah.
And it's not just starting pitchers, it seems to specifically be like that team's ace, which to me is different.
Yeah.
Like as a starting pitcher, I think when a starting pitcher is going well, you leave him in, By default, he's starting the game because that's your best. You're saying that's our guy right now. That's our best option. But to me, it does change a little bit when you're talking about like actually my ace, my guy. And I think it's happened, I want to say in every game so far. Like the ace has been, one of the team's ace has been pitching well and he gets taken out the second anyone gets on, it's like, that's a situation. I saw some people talking about that specific game. They're up 3. That specific inning, because I know
came out in the 8th, right?
Right, the 8th.
Tyler Rogers came in, got in and out.
They're up 3-0.
Yeah.
He gets 2 quick outs, and then he hung a slider to Mookie Betts, and Mookie Betts hit a single. Because my other thing with, it's not just, stats. There's a feel to it where most, at least good managers, where you can tell a pitcher, like, what's his stuff look like? Mm-hmm. It's one thing when a guy's getting outs, but it's like, hey, man, his stuff's starting to flatten up a little bit. Like, these are warning track fly balls. Mm-hmm. Like, as opposed to, like, yeah, this guy gave up a hit, but, this is sharp, it's soft contact. That was kind of a fluky hit. And Mookie Betts' wasn't, because he hung a slider. But the 2 outs before that were little dribblers back to the pitch. Like, nobody was touching him. Mm-hmm. And, someone was like, well, because Kyle Seager is coming up. Like, well, Kyle Seager is a great hitter. I'm like, that's why I want my best pitcher facing him. Nothing against Tyler Rogers or any reliever there is, but I'm like, but that's why I want my best guy facing him. And I don't know. And especially it was like a 3-run lead. I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, he gets a 2-run home run right now. I don't love the fact that your ace, who's been shoving all game, you're just assuming he's going to give up a 2-run home run. Sure. But let's say he does. I mean, theoretically, you're still up 3-2. I know that's, you don't want to give up any runs, but I also saw in the Dodgers, Cardinals, wild card game, for the most part, at least for me, I think most baseball fans, if you like pitching, this is Scherzer versus Wainwright. Mm-hmm. This is as good as it gets, especially someone around my age, growing up. Like, it's hard for those 2 guys not to be 2 of your favorite pitchers. Mm-hmm. And these guys are obviously a little older now, but they're getting after it. And neither one of them, I would say, was like super sharp, but they were battling their asses off, and it was 1-1 game, and it's 5th inning, and they both get pulled. I was just like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see these guys come. I don't know. Yeah. It just, I always come back to, if I'm going to lose, I want to lose with my guy. Mm-hmm. Like when the Rays lost in the World Series last year, if I lose because Blake Snell, who was pitching as he was pitching, gives it up, I can live with myself, I feel like, a lot easier than when I take him out and then we lose because of the guys we bring in. And this is nothing against relief pitchers, and a lot of relief pitchers are really good, but I don't know. To me, it's become why, like, I don't even like watching playoff baseball anymore. Because also, and I've brought this up to David, and I know he disagrees with me, but one of the problems I have with baseball nowadays is, like, there's too many times where there's, like, a big matchup, like a star potential matchup, that is then avoided by, bringing someone else in. Like a Logan Webb, who's not a household name, but not yet. Any big time pitcher against Kyle Seager. Mm-hmm. I want to see that matchup. I don't even know who this guy's name is that they're bringing in. It's a specialty that he specializes against left-handed hitters that hit in the 2-hole, that can't hit sliders. Like, this is the perfect guy for him. Like, I don't want to see that. Yeah. I want to see this guy who, is one of the best pitchers pitching right now against this guy. It's a little bit late in the game. It's the 3rd time in the lineup. Like, that's what I want to see. Yeah. I understand the analytics say, 3rd times in the lineup or whatever. I guess, I don't know.
It just depends it depends who the team is, though. Like, there are situations where a guy that's like maybe had a good year out of the pen comes in, and you're like, who's it? Like, I don't want to see this. But then if, Blake Trinan comes in or Hader comes in or Kimbrel or somebody like that comes in, you're like, I obviously know who this is. I like my chances here with this guy coming into the game. I
like my chances, but I still, if Blake Trinan Blake Trinan might be the nastiest pitcher in baseball, just stuff wise. Yeah. He looks like the least fun person to face. But if he gives it up, I'm like, I would just rather Scherzer do that. If Scherzer does it, I could be like, hey, Bennett, why'd you lose, the game? Because they beat Max Scherzer. Oh, okay, good for them. Tip your cap. I just feel like having to make the other team beat your guy is the mindset that I would take. Yeah. And I think it's more, at least in that situation, I could argue Scherzer was not very sharp in that game. But a situation where it's like Logan Webb, that's like the first hit he's given up in like innings. It's a single to Mookie Betts. He's a great hitter, and he hit a single. It's just like, okay, that's it. When he was clearly still sharp. Yeah. There is a difference. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but there is a difference in games. I've been in dugouts of games where guys shoving, and then like, again, the 8th inning, he gets like 3 quick outs, but all outs were like, hey, everything was up in the zone. They're starting now. They're the heart of their order is coming up next inning. The manager will go, I think it's probably time to end it there, as opposed to the guy shoving, and it's like the second one guy gets on. And I always go back to, I remember Alan Mills would say a lot to our manager whenever they'd be discussing, sending a guy out for another inning. And he would always say, unless he has a legitimate shot to finish that inning, don't send him back out. Mm-hmm. And so I guess for me, it'd at least be a little bit different. It would still bother me, but I would like it a little bit more if it was just at the end of an inning.
Yeah.
I don't like that they go out there, they get an out with nobody on. It's like, okay, we just wanted you to get that one guy. I know you're playing matchups, but I'm like,
yeah, it's the
that
matchups.
would piss me off as a pitcher.
Yeah.
I'm like,
no, I get that. Yeah.
You're taking me out after I just struck out a guy,
right? And that's what led to Scherzer shaking his hands,
right.
as opposed to giving him the ball.
Right.
He doesn't want to come out in that moment, and that's what you want out of that guy. But
same with Wainwright. Wainwright was not happy either.
Right.
He's like, you let me hit last inning.
I mean, even the guy last night for the Astros. I think he maybe threw 2 and change or something, and came out with a 2-run lead, I think, and then they brought a reliever in early, and the reliever gave up a 3-run homer, and he looked, the starter looked pretty frustrated. Right. But it's hard. I don't necessarily agree with the reasoning, but like the big thing now is like the biggest thing is the third time through the lineup. That is just like, it's this huge thing. You can't let a guy go 3 times, or it's the matchups. I get
that over the course of a season. That's what we're doing. It changes to me in the playoffs.
Yeah,
it's playoff baseball.
Sure.
This is Max Scherzer. This is, we're talking Hall of Famers here. Let's give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt that this is not your normal him facing the lineup for the third time.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Was there ever a time? Here's another thing too. Like from a coaching standpoint, was there ever a time in your career where you were tired, you were gassed, you got out of an inning, and a manager or coach came up to you in between innings and go, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, were you ever able to be honest and be like, "Yeah, I'm not really feeling," or did you always say, "I'm fine," even when you knew you weren't?
This is actually funny because I would joke around with at least pitching coaches, sometimes managers, if I had that relationship with them, and I would say I hate when you ask me that.
Okay.
I think that's a bullshit thing to ask
really
a pitcher.
It's a hard question to answer.
Because on one hand, if anyone says they're tired, get them out of there.
Right.
But like, I guess sometimes I'd be like, yeah, like, I don't remember exactly. I don't think I'd ever be like, yeah, I'm done. Mm-hmm. But I think sometimes I'd be like, I don't know if it was in the look I gave them. It was like, this is your job to realize what's going on here and to not put me in this position. But I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I kind of give them a look like I'm good, but like you're watching what's going on out there. Because I would have that too. Like I said, like there'd be times where, and you have to combat this as a competitor, as an athlete. You can't let yourself, think you're getting tired or whatnot. But there'd be times, in those situations where I'd end an inning and I'm like, yeah, my stuff's starting to flatten up a little bit. These are starting to be some hard contact outs. And they'd be like, oh, how you feeling? I'm like, I'm feeling good, but. You watching the game, because then but on the flip side, then you have the other way where I'm feeling great and they go, okay, you're done. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I feel like I'm cruising.
Did you ever get mad at a handshake in between innings? Like if you threw 6 shutty and you felt great, you wanted to keep going back out there?
Yeah. I remember that was one of the first things when I started playing, with some vets, some guys with big league experience. They would always say, don't fight the handshake. That's my one piece of advice to you.
Yeah.
Don't fight the handshake. And I understand what they were saying, and I think as I got older and got further into my career, I did understand that a little bit better, and I would kind of do that. I think early in my career I would fight a little bit and be like, hey, no, like I'm good. Or I think later in my career I would never fight it. I would still maybe be upset because I'm like, I feel good, or it's a lot. I will say it's just tough because, like, at least for me, like when I'm pitching, and I'm in the the heat of battle, it's like any like rational thinking is kind of out the window. We're an hour away from me having rational thoughts. Really,
you're in Roger Clemens throw the broken bat at Mike Piazza mode.
I'm not. Maybe I don't know. It's just like, so in the moment, as a competitor, you want to keep going, but like the point you made the other way, where it's like there are times, I wouldn't say it's happened often, but there's a few times I can think about where I was walking back to the dugout and you're kind of expecting the handshake and they give you the fist pump and you're just like,
or a pat on the butt.
Yeah.
That's the thing as a reliever. It's like, I enjoy throwing one inning, or finishing off an inning. That way I could be ready to go the next night. Like, when you become a reliever, especially like when you've been a reliever for a while, like just a 1 inning, no up downs, that's a good
Well,
thing.
I was watching, this was a cool experience for me. I don't even know if I told you this, but I was I was hanging out with my sister and brother-in-law, and he's a big Mets fan. So we had the Mets game on. It was the Sunday night game, and in comes Jake Reed pitching for the Mets. And I think he went like three innings. And I was thinking, I was like, has he ever, like, when was the last time he went like this long of an outing? And I would imagine Sunday night he's pitching great. You even had an at bat, in the game. I'm like, I'm sure he's jacked up right now.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm sure at some point he's gonna be. If he was being honest, he'd be like, I'm getting tired here.
Yeah.
Like this isn't something I normally do.
Yeah, I mean that was that incident. Like the bullpen was spent. We had probably, I don't know. We had two guys. We had two guys that were definitely hot. Everybody else was down, and our starter ended up going. I think he went 2. May have gone 3, and then I was the first guy in, and running or warming up and running into the game, and even before the game, like I was told, like, hey, you're in there and you're going length,
Right.
So I knew kind of going in what the situation was. And I'd gotten through 2, and it was one of those things where like we were talking about earlier, where you could see the stats up in the stadium or whatever. Like they had, down the third base line and the first base line, they had the stat line, and it had a pitch count, and that type of thing. And so I saw my pitch count,
Right.
and I got through 2 innings, and I was like, 24 pitches. And so, I knew that I was going to go back out there, and I did feel fine,
Right.
like I felt great, the adrenaline and everything. And I knew my spot was coming up in the lineup, so I was like, I'm fine,
Yeah.
But in most cases, like when you throw that 1 inning, it's such a good feeling to see your pitching coach walk over to the phone,
Right.
And you see, as you're walking back to the
Right.
dugout,
I did my job.
yeah, or you see him on the walkie-talkie,
Right.
and then you get there and the manager puts his hand out.
Yeah.
Like that's a good feeling,
Yeah.
And obviously there's nights as a reliever where it's like you just have to wear it and you have to, to eat innings. But like,
What's funny on the pitch count thing is my advice that I give to people, and as a coach, I am big, like, I don't want to know my pitch count.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was coaching this past year, like, I won't, and the guys be like, what's my pitch count? I'll never tell guys their pitch count. I always thought that was, I didn't want to pitch to the pitch count, that's why I was like, I'm going to go as long as I can, as hard as I can for as long as I can. And it's on the coaching staff to, protect your players and to understand the vibe of the game. There are situations where, where it's sometimes like, hey, we just need this guy to go this certain amount, and a guy's got to wear it, or something like that. But the part that always bothered me most was kind of what I was talking about with the playoff pitchers, is a situation where it was a game where I felt like I'm never going to say I'm tired and I can't go, but it felt like I was like, hey, man, it'd be a nice handshake right here. They're like, no, you're going back out there. And I go back out there, and the guy would get on, and then they would pull me.
Yeah.
I was like, I had to come out here just to face one guy.
Yeah.
Like, if I wasn't going to be allowed to get out of my own jam, if I wasn't going to be able to, like, really, because that tells me I had no chance of actually finishing this inning. You might go, well, if you didn't let the first guy on, but I'm like, then why did I why did I have to come back out
someone
here?
in for a
If you're
fresh
going to
inning?
send me back out there, it means that this is now, it's still my game. It's still my inning. And I know that's not what, analytics say, and that's not how it's coached, but I think that's the part that always bothered me. If I got sent back out in a situation where I felt like, hey, I feel like I could have been done there, I'm like, then you better let me finish the inning.
Yeah.
Unless, if I give up like bases loaded, I give up runs, sure. But like, there was a time I can remember where, like, one guy got on. I think I walked him. But like, one guy got on and then he took me out. I'm like, well, now if that guy scores, it's on me. Like, why? I don't understand why we needed to do this. This seemed.
And that's when like the communication you really get to see like what teams are good at communicating as far as coaches to players in that situation in specific. So, say you're in the 6th inning and you have 2 outs, and maybe you let somebody on or 2 guys on, and we get a call down in the pen and say, hey, get so and so going, get them going, and so you get up and you start throwing, and then you get out of the inning, and then they call back down and say, sit so and so down. The good communicators, guys that I've played for will tell us that. So they'll say, hey, he's not going in, but have him just, moving around, playing catch, maybe when Bennett goes back out, so that, if Bennett if Bennett walks a guy or
Right.
gives up a couple hits, like we need him to be ready to go.
Right.
I've had other situations where it's like, hey, sit Jake down. Okay, so Bennett's good. His pitch count's still good. He's going back out. And then you give up a hit. Get Reed
Right.
back up. Get him hot.
And why isn't he ready?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And it's like, or the worst part is, are you ready? It's like
Right.
there's no other answer to that question than yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
When you're as a reliever, I was a reliever for a little bit of time, but when you're a reliever and you get told to get hot, and then because it's usually you then let us know when you get hot.
Yeah.
When the manager radios down, is he ready yet? That's always a kind of a shitty feeling because whether you are or not, it's like you can't say no to that question.
It's like somebody asking you how you feel,
Right.
or like you want to go back out. It's like,
Right.
what do I say to that?
Yeah.
Like, you have it's yes, which blows my mind too from a performance standpoint. It's like everything in sports is about winning and succeeding. Not everything, but like that should be the goal of the team during a game, right? Like, what is going to put me in the best situation to succeed is actually being ready. You know, so like. That's when like the communication is so key. It's like I'm going to help my team win this game by being prepared and being ready, not by throwing 2 pitches off the mound and then getting 8 out there. And like it's just so confusing to me. And the other thing, that I think one of the things that's most misunderstood about relief pitchers is it's not the pitch count that gets guys. Sometimes it is. Like if you throw 35 in an inning, like that's a lot. It's the up downs, so like
I'll add on to that. I would say the same thing at least for me for starters. I just in general, I've always said that people misunderstand that.
Yeah.
What's his pitch count out? It's like, I don't care. I've only been up down twice max this year, and we're on inning 5 now.
Right.
That doesn't even matter what my pitch count is.
Right.
I haven't done this
before. And I can't tell you how many outings in my career where it's like, I've gone 1 and then I've gone 2 and I'm at 22 pitches. I've got 3 Ks in 2 innings, and then it's like, oh, he's only at 22. We'll send him back out there, and then you go out there and you walk a couple guys and you give up a couple of runs. And you're like, should have been done, Like so. It's not like I wish that was. That's
the number one thing for a starter, at least for myself and most of the people I talk to, is like when you're getting ready for a season, you'll have times in spring training when they're like, hey, like. We got to get everyone in, so you only go 1 or maybe 2, but we'll have you go like 30 pitches in each inning to build up your pitch count. It's like that's not what I need. I'd rather do 4 innings of 10 pitches, but I need that up down to get ready for the season. I don't think a lot of people don't necessarily know that. That's another reason why I battled it with in high school with my high school pitchers when I was coaching. We always went about their pitch count. And I would always try to tell the manager, I'm like, hey, he's never gone 5 innings before. Yeah. I don't care what his pitch count's at. Like, I think he should be done there. Like, no. And then the kid would go, well, what am I at? And I'd just be like, don't worry about it. I'm trying to protect you. Right now.
There's so many.
I would say, because I've always been somewhat hard on managers in baseball. I don't think they do much. I think the most important thing, we've already kind of covered it, is like, just understanding your team, having your guys' backs, like all the stuff that go away from baseball. I think filling out a lineup, and once the game starts, there's really not much you can do. I would argue, this might sound biased because I'm a pitcher, but I would argue the most important managerial quality for a baseball manager is understanding how to use a bullpen. And not like when to, not specifically who to pitch, but like understanding the bullpen life. Where like, I remember I spent a little bit of time as a reliever with the Orioles, only for like a month or 2 probably in my career. But there was one time, I know I'm going to keep bringing up Alan Mills. He just happened to be the pitching coach, but he had to go somewhere. He had to like miss a couple games. He had a family thing to go to. So our manager, who's not a pitcher, it's minor leagues. He's trying to get through, and every game that our pitching coach was gone was just an absolute shit show in the bullpen. And we had one game where we had a guy. It was one of those where our starters had a really bad like first inning. So we already got someone up in the first, and he got out of it, and he kind of cruised. But we had a guy that ended up getting up 4 times in the game. Sat back down, got back up, and our starter ended up going 8. It was Luke Rennie. We had him on an episode earlier. He went 8 innings, gave like 10 runs. They just like kept him pitching. It was so weird. And he was like the entire time like trying to find the shake. He's like, get me out of here. Yeah. But this guy kept getting up, and then they go, okay, now you're going to pitch the 9th, and he said no.
He said no.
He said no.
This is in minor leagues. Minor leagues. So what happened?
Nothing really. Ultimately what happened is I had to pitch. Okay. And I had my worst outing by far because it was like, I think it was like 2 outs. like in the 8th or something that to go out to the 9th, I had to like get up really fast.
Yeah.
I'm not making an excuse for why I didn't do well. But I always joke with him. I was like, because I had like good numbers, and that kind of threw it off a little bit. I was like, you screwed me there.
Yeah.
He was like, but ultimately, everyone in the bullpen was on his side.
Right.
We understood that he was being abused, but it was more that the manager just seemed oblivious to it. He's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean you can't like do that? You're like, no, dude, like you can't do that. And it sucked because obviously if Mills had been there, that would have never happened. But it was just it just highlighted to me, like, I'm not trying to shit talk managers here, but specifically because he wasn't a pitcher, he was a third baseman, like just not understanding that little thing. And I think most managers, and at least for me, you can tell me if you're different. When I was a reliever, like or guys I played with that would go like they go 2 days in a row without pitching, but they got hot 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
And on that third day, it's like the manager's like, well, you haven't pitched in 2 days. It's like, yeah, but I kind of have. Like getting hot is not pitching, but it's kind of close to pitching. And how managers don't understand how that almost, to me, like kind of counts as a day.
Yeah.
I remember we had a guy who ended up getting hurt, and he was like, I pitched or got hot for like 8 days straight. And it's like, well, you only pitched 3 of those games. It's like, yeah, but in between, you weren't giving me my rest. And so it's like stuff like that, like a manager not quite understanding how that like the life of a bullpen works, I think is
I feel the same
huge thing.
And there's just, again, there's such a misunderstanding of, a lot of managers are a little older, and played baseball at a time that was a lot different, like where relievers were throwing 3 innings, day off, 3 and change, day off, 3, their bodies were different, right. Like what is going on now is it's not necessarily a mental lapse or this gap, like no, our bodies we didn't do that growing up. We haven't done that our bodies are not used to that. We're going to fall apart, so like a lot of times, commentators in games are older baseball players that, have done that, or a lot of times managers are guys that have had, have run bullpens like that before where they can throw every single night and be okay. And I think a lot of it is, just how much our bodies have changed. But I played this year in Oklahoma City, AAA with the Dodgers with Kevin Quackenbush, who was a closer here for the Pods for a little while, but played for Bud Black when he was the manager here. And Bud Black was a pitcher. Right. And Kevin loved playing for Bud because he would be out at stretch, when guys are playing catch, and he'd look you in the eye and he'd say, how do you feel today? And he'd go to each reliever and kind of gauge how guys were feeling, and not ask in a way of like, hey, how do you feel today? Right. Can you, like, do you need a day? Right. Like, no, like, how do you feel? Like, are you good to go? Do you need a day? Like, actually, honestly, assessing each and every bullpen arm and seeing how guys feel. And he loved that. The communication was great. He said, when guys are getting up, getting going, like there was a high level of communication from the dugout to the bullpen. Did he say
guys felt comfortable? Saying, no, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
Because that's the important thing, is knowing that you, like you said, like, that you could say that if you wanted to. Because ultimately that's helping out the team.
Totally.
Totally. That it's not that you're soft for not wanting to pitch. It's like, I'm letting you know right now that, if you give me, a day here right now, this is going to help the team out. And
there are also guys who have earned that, that more than others. So, this year in New York, there were, the bullpen got used a lot. And a lot of those guys, would go back to back. Some guys were going 3 days in a row, frequently. And there'd be times there was like, I need a day or two, and the manager and the pitching coach there were awesome in understanding that. But what inevitably happens in those situations is those innings fall to the guys with less time, with, rubber arms. Right. And so there's part of it that's like, you do appreciate that and being able to communicate that to your manager. But sometimes it can be hard being the guy with options left. And
it's also a fine line because some people, also players will abuse it.
Yeah.
I've been on teams where, just a guy was always asking for a day, and the coach was like, "You got to pitch."
Yeah,
like at some point you got to pitch.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's kind of that fine line too. Is you talk about like, kind of earning that reputation. That it's same thing with any sport where you're talking about in football where a guy there's certain guys where they'd be like, yeah, I can't play this week. I'm hurt.
Yeah.
And the coach would be like, we know he's hurt because he's not the type of person that would say he can't play unless there was something really wrong with him.
Yeah.
So you can also why it probably falls on the younger guys too, is the younger guys haven't built up that credibility.
They haven't thrown 70 games in a year.
Right.
Or it's cool like in football too, where it's like guys get toward the end of their career and they're limited all week. They just don't practice anymore. They're just not practicing. They're doing some sprints, they're running some plays. But
they didn't even go to training camp.
Right. It's like, dude, like I'm going to be ready on Sunday, but during the week, it's all about getting my body right. It's just such an interesting thing,
Yeah, absolutely. That's...
Can I tell you one thing that Janie noticed this week at that barbecue that I thought was pretty cool too? You guys may have talked about it before, but it was mostly Fullerton guys. It was in Southern California, and so most of the guests at this barbecue were guys that Coach Horton had either coached at Fullerton or Cerritos, or they were guys that played with him or whatever, but at some point have come across him at at Fullerton. So it was like 99% Fullerton, Cerritos guys, and then there were a couple of Oregon guys there. But my guess is a lot of these guys hadn't seen each other in a while. But like when they get in the backyard and you get together, and it almost looked as if like they were, I don't know, like they had been seeing each other every day. And so like one thing that I've really appreciated about just I guess baseball, and even like like our relationship, like it's like we don't talk a ton, when we're gone. And like, I don't talk to a lot of my teammates from college anymore, but like my alumni weekend is coming up here at the end of the month. And I know for certain that as soon as I go up there and we get together again, it's going to be like how it was when we were in college, seeing each other every day. And it's the same like with us, like we go months and months without seeing each other, talking every now and then, but there's no like, there's not an idea there of like, is he not my boy anymore?
Right.
Like I haven't heard from him.
Right.
It's like, no, we mutually understand that. Like, it's like, we're not going to be on the phone every day. Like,
because I believe that is one of like the most important, I feel like, traits to any, good friendship, relation. It's like, I don't, like you said, and I think that is a very common thing, specifically in athletes, just because they're forced to do that, especially minor league baseball player, you're moving all over the place. A guy gets cut who lives in, the South, and I live in San Diego. Like I'll just never see that. And it's the same thing. Like I have buddies of mine from the Orioles I haven't seen or, spoken to in years. Then you do see him or something. You comment on some of his stuff, and it's like, if I saw that person right now, I know it would be no different than when I saw him 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or whatnot.
It's a great thing.
Like I had a buddy of mine who, with the Orioles, he's one of my, probably one of the better friends I made with the Orioles. Got cut, lives in like Virginia now. Haven't seen him in a long time. He's like starting up this new. He left baseball, went to go get his law degree. He's now doing stuff like help out minor league baseball players, and like he called me to like ask me. He wanted to talk to he was trying to talk to some minor league players of what they would change and whatnot. And like I don't think I've spoken to him in like 4 years, and like we must have talked for like 2 hours. Like we talked a little bit about what we wanted to talk about, and then we were just shooting the shit for like 2 hours. And I was like, this is like I saw you yesterday, and it's the same thing.
It's great.
Yeah, I agree. Can I one last thing to kind of bring it full circle on the coaching, because you had brought him up earlier in the podcast, and this Urban Meyer story that's going on, I think is really interesting, because I saw a couple of people say this about him, and it made me think about when we were talking about what makes a good coach. Is I don't know if it was like Ryan Clark or it was some like ex-player had said about the whole story. They were talking about it, and he's like, honestly, like, I'm not going to talk on somebody's, personal life or what. The most concerning part of that story to me is that he didn't fly back with the team. And like his point was like, I've never heard of a coach not flying back with his team and not wanting to be with his team, And I thought that was so interesting. Like, obviously, everyone's talking about this. I don't know what was going on with this girl, but obviously people are talking about the side of it, about he's married and that side of it. And he was like, the only thing that I would be concerned to me, and I think would bother the players, is you get on that plane and you're like, where's our head coach? Why is our head coach not with us right now? And it made me think of a story of a buddy of mine. I don't want to, put anyone in a bad spot, but I won't name him, but he was a major league manager for a little bit, and a buddy of mine had played for him. And he was like, the first thing he noticed he goes, after the game, he's the first one out the door. He's like, I've never seen that in my entire life. And he only lasted for about a year or two as a manager, but it made me think of, that stuff, like that little thing, and just the Urban Meyer story. I think it was just kind of funny because that was a takeaway from like the player side of it.
Yeah.
The public side of it is, kind of making fun of him and, talking about that side of it. But like the player side was like, I don't care what you do away from the field, but like the fact that you didn't want to, be on the ship with us, the fact that you didn't want to be with us, like that would bother me more than anything.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's not going very well.
Yeah, that is
in Jacksonville.
That is a good point that I don't think, we, or maybe not. I mean, I guess we understand that, of like whether it's the manager being the first one out or in this specific situation, like not getting on the plane. But it's just, again, it's one of those things where it's like, you really hope not to ever have a slip up like this in your entire coaching career. But it would obviously be a lot different if you had 15 years under your belt and 2 rings and have brought a team out of
which he does in college.
In college, right? But if you had, if you had that experience at this level, and had maybe brought a team, from a very low and dark place, which is where they're at right now, and they've been for a little bit. But it's like he doesn't have that yet, and so it's such a bad situation because you have that aspect of it is the character questions now, and then just the idea of not getting on the plane with your guys, but then you also have the what actually happened. Is like, and not that you ever
would you not agree though that while it's a bad look for him, you don't want it on social media, but that let's say theoretically he had an affair with his wife. Does anyone in the clubhouse really care about that?
Some guys might.
You
Yeah.
think so?
I
don't
think
think I would care. I'd be like, hey man, like I think that was kind of shitty to do to your family, but like I think most people are like, hey man, your personal business is your personal business. When it gets to coming to the field, when it happens with our team, if you're like it's a distraction maybe, but I think something where it's like I don't care about that at all. I care that you're not with us 100%.
Yeah.
I care that it seems like you don't care about us. I don't care what you do away from here. I don't care the relationships you have. I don't care. Would I like you to be a great husband and a great father and a great person? Sure. But ultimately, like that's really none of my business. That's not my job.
I think it changes too from college to pro too, where it's like college, part of your responsibility should be mentoring, and it's hard. It's hard to take that seriously when that sort of stuff is going on, even if it's off the field. But you're right. Maybe it changes a little bit professionally when it's like, look, we're all adults here and we're trying to win, and like who I am is sort of who I am. I'm not really relying on you to shape and mold me as a person.
You're asking me as a man, do I think what you're doing, is that a good idea? I'd say no. Yeah. I think that's wrong.
Sure.
But it's your life, that's for you to work out. It's the stuff about being either the first one out as the manager, as the captain of the ship. Like you're in the big leagues and you come in from a game, and whether you win, lose, let's say you lose because in this specific instance, they're not doing well. And, you're down and, you're kind of slowly taking off your, uniform and about to shower or eat or whatnot. And the first thing you see is like a minute after you all get in there is your manager is dressed up and out of there.
That's bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
you're like, I don't care. Really I don't care how you are with analytics. I don't care if you help me with my swing, my pitching. If you're going to honestly if you're that quickly out of there and the first one out of there, like there's just no way to gain a team's trust in that. Like people see that and they go, yeah, this ain't it.
Right.
This guy is not it.
Quickly too, and that's
he's got one of the best baseball minds I've ever seen. Can't lead this team though.
No, totally. I think there are responsibilities, in my opinion, that come with being a leader in anything, of overseeing a team and leading by example. And so I think that character stuff is important, but like, I think toward the top of that list is your team, the people that you're leading, knowing that you're there with them no matter what. And so like, it's just such a tough situation because it's like, it's been a really tough season for them. And then this on top of it, of just, and what do you think is the future? Like, do you think he's gone this year? I
thought originally, this is my thing. I'm not an Urban Meyer guy. I respect the success he's had in college. it just everywhere he's gone, there's been some sort of controversy. There's been some sort of problem, and he just kind of seem to jump from one place to the next. It seems like the seat starts to get a little warm because there's some rumblings of some stuff, and he goes, "Okay, I'll retire." He always goes, "I'll retire," and then he unretires a year later to go somebody else. So I've always just kind of thought he was a little shady character, and so originally I started seeing that like some of the players before this, there was reports that they were like, they didn't respect him or whatnot. Like, as a lot of college coaches that come to the NFL don't realize, it's like, we're not kids anymore. I'm a grown man. I'm a 30-year-old man with 3 kids making millions of dollars. There's a certain way you're going to talk to me if you want my respect. I don't know how many veterans the Jaguars have, but so when the story came out about where USC fired Clay Helton, and there was some rumbling, maybe Urban Meyer will be the USC coach. I was like, I do kind of see him pulling similar to Nick Saban and leaving to go back to college. Now I think it might not be his choice if he's going to leave or not. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if you're a head coach of any team, and at least this is my opinion, you lose the locker room, you really can't get it back after you lose it. It does sometimes take a little bit to lose it. It's not just like a couple bad decisions. Maybe you start talking, but like once you lose the locker room, there's really nothing you can do. And I think if an owner sees that of a big corporation, a big operation, whether you're a bad team or not, you're like, I can't have that.
Right.
You know, like we got to at least be able to sell hope. You know, you go into a new season and it's like, even the Lions were like, hey man, we got a new guy. We're selling hope here. You know, like just to sell tickets, you need people. If you're the Jaguars and all offseason you hear about the Jaguars players hate Urban Meyer and he's a terrible coach or whatnot, like if you're the owner, you're like, I can't have that. You know, so I kind of think I wouldn't be surprised if he's one and done.
Like you think he'll make it through the year?
I don't know. I'm not good at predicting that stuff. I don't know how it ends up.
But
playing out.
You're saying you think it could be less than like 2 years?
I think he'll be a one and I won't say I think. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one and done. Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of firing coaches in the middle of the season. I think it's like if you thought because then it's just as much of a bad reflection on whoever hired that person. It's like you thought it was the guy, let the year play out, and then even when the Padres like fired their pitching coach with like a month left in the season, I was like, it just seems weird to me. Like whether he's a terrible pitching coach or not, I don't know anything about him, but like seems like it just doesn't resonate well in the clubhouse. So it's just like
maybe a scapegoat situation.
Yeah, it's like or what it was like. Let's let the year play out, or I don't know. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily condone, the Jaguars like firing him right now. I also don't think he's done anything to be fired right now.
They're not.
I stand by that whole situation. Wow, I think it's not a good look. I don't think it played well. In that clubhouse, like I don't care about that stuff. If, like I said, like even if he was cheating on his wife, like if my manager was cheating on his wife, and I don't even know if that's what he did, but let's just say that even if you were to take that, I'd be like, I think you're a scumbag, but what's the game plan for this week? Like it's our job. That might sound harsh, but I'm just like, it's not my responsibility to worry about another man's personal life and his family. That's for him to get in order. And I would want it to be good because that would probably affect how he does his job. But that stuff wouldn't bother me. The stuff that would bother me was stuff where it felt like he was not 100% into his job of helping this team out. So I don't know. In general, I just don't care about anyone, what they do. In general, teammates, coaches, I don't care what you do away from the field.
So you don't care even if they're the ones telling you what to do, taking the ball out of your hand? Well,
I'm not going to like them doing that. But I don't think there's necessarily a correlation for you, not being a loyal husband and, how you view the game of baseball necessarily. I'm not going to like any manager taking the ball in my hand. If there's a situation where I want to keep pitching and you take the ball in my hand, I'm not like, if you weren't cheating on your wife, like I would be good right now. Yeah. And again, I don't think he cheated on his wife. It was a situation he should have been. I'm just saying, I think for the most part, I know we probably feel differently about this, but I think a lot of guys don't really care about that stuff. And I saw a lot of players be like, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm not going to pretend to care about what another man's personal life is like. The stuff I care about is this stuff that he's clearly doing that's not helping us win games or improve as a team. you could argue in today's day and age, him being a distraction is a problem for the team. But yeah, that stuff would not bother me as much. So I don't necessarily think he needs to be fired over that. It's more just like, yeah, as the year goes on, if it's clear that the Jaguars, he's lost the locker room, they don't want to play for him, then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I guess it's shocking because it's Urban Meyer and he's a well-known name. But obviously, as a 49ers fan, the Niners went 2 years in a row where they had one and done coaches with Tom Sula and then Chip Kelly. And both of them, I think everyone was like, yeah, that was a good call.
I forgot Chip Kelly was in San Fran.
Right. But it's not just that they had a bad year. You could argue right now, watching the Lions play, right? They got no wins. They don't look like a great team, but they play hard for Dan Campbell. Regardless of what you think of Dan Campbell, it's like these guys play hard. It's a lot easier to be like, let's see this play out. As opposed to even in a 1 year setting over, if it's like, yeah, you've lost the locker room and they don't want to play for you, yeah, let's move on. Let's cut our losses. Let's move on. So I guess I would expect maybe for that to happen this year. And I would not be surprised if then the next year, Urban Meyer goes somewhere.
Yeah.
Although I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if nobody wants him.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird because he's a great college coach. I think at some point, I know Jim Harbaugh said something about it, a couple years ago, and because of Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, it got kind of swept under the rug as just Jim Harbaugh being biased or whatnot. But he was like, listen, the guy's a great coach, but controversy follows him wherever he goes. And at some point, I think people are going to kind of be fed up with this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to talk about one game at least.
Okay.
What do you got on last night's game?
Well, when these episodes come out, I don't know what you mean by last night. So you have to specify.
So Sunday Night Football,
okay.
Chiefs, Bills. Do the Chiefs look like a bad football team?
The Chiefs look exactly like I've described them, I feel like, to be, that you didn't quite agree with. I'm not trying to
it's fine.
gloat, but this is what they are, a one-dimensional team. They've been a one-dimensional team. And that one dimension is starting to have some problems with it. Where also the other dimensions, the defense, it's gotten even
big
worse.
Plays.
Well, I'm just saying specifically the defense gotten even worse.
Yeah.
Over the past couple of years, if I told you, just forget the players involved, forget the teams involved. There's a team in the NFL that is one of the best passing offenses you'll ever see. They can't run the ball and they can't play defense. Would you not go, oh, that's not going to be a very good team. It's going to be an inconsistent team.
Yeah.
They can beat anyone, but they're going to struggle to be good teams if they don't ever have the ball. That would be my first thing. They don't play good defense, but they're the best. Even if they have just a great offense, you don't play good defense. So when do they get the ball?
Yeah.
After every 8 minutes, they get the ball because the offense is able to do whatever they want to do. And I think one of the issues that is starting to pop up a little bit is that it's weird because this is kind of the Patrick Mahomes that I think a lot of people figured he would be, even at best case scenarios, that he's going to make some great plays, but he's going to turn the ball over because it kind of is reckless. Somehow he's been able to do that without turning the ball over his first couple of years, where this year he's already totaled his turnovers
6 picks.
5 weeks into the season, where it's a team that can't run the ball, can't play defense, great passing abilities, but are going to turn the ball over. So they're going to lose a turnover battle every game. They can't run the ball and they can't play defense. You'd be like, yeah, that's not a very good team.
Yeah.
But I go back to, and I'm sure at some point in the year they'll blow out a good team or whatnot. It's when it's right, like I said, that one dimension is so good that it is going to beat people and be competitive and not shock anyone if they win Super Bowls. But if it's not right, if he has games where he throws a couple picks, or they go 2-3 drives in a row where they don't score points, knowing that the other team is coming back, especially up against a team like the Bills who can score a lot of points, you're like, yeah. I think I was listening to Colin Cowherd talk about the game before the week, and I thought he brought up a good point, which obviously looks good now because it came true. But he's like, everything about this game screams Bills blowout. We all love Mahomes. Chiefs are excited. Everything about this matchup screams that the Bills are going to blow the Chiefs out. And he wouldn't do it. It's they run the ball, they control the ball, they control the clock. They play good defense. The corners shut your wide receivers down. The way they're coached, everything. The Bills are just a better team. And I think a lot of people have a tough time seeing that because the Chiefs have been so good.
Yeah, that was a weird thing about the game last night is I don't feel like the time of possession was skewed, how it normally is in like a blowout like that against a team who can run the ball like the Bills can, because they didn't run the ball a ton.
Right.
I think Josh Allen threw 27 or 28 passes, 15 completions. Like, they scored a ton of points, but they scored their drives were like that.
Yeah.
It was a big play. It was a big run out of Josh Allen. It was another big play for a touchdown. It was like the entire game was like that. I feel like the Chiefs had the ball for most of the time. And then I think Al Michaels or somebody brought up a good point toward the end of the game last night when the Chiefs were trying to get back into it and it was too late. They were like, they could have been doing this all night. They were throwing 5-6 yard, quick outs, moving the ball efficiently, quickly. He's like, where was this?
It's always tough with that type of stuff because it's like, well, the defense maybe for the Bills now they're playing differently. That's what they want you to do.
Right.
They were covering that early in the game. That was the game plan early in the game, and now when they're up, they're kind of playing a more prevent. With like, throw it underneath, and we'll rally and we'll tackle to it. So, that's why some people, they put up, the offenses that put up stats.
Yeah, garbage
always
points
down.
at the
it's
end.
like,
yeah. The other thing too about the Chiefs that I'm starting to worry about is that I remember, Chip's first year in the NFL with the Eagles, and how quickly the league caught on to that kind of style of offense. And then I think about the Redskins in that same year, about like how RG3 the Washington football team looked like the greatest team, the greatest offense. It was so exciting to watch that team play. He did, but I'm just like, it was so crazy how quickly the league caught on to the sort of read option, college offense in the NFL. It's just like, they're just too fast. There's too many athletes on defense here where it's just not going to work, And so I'm starting to worry about where this offense, for the first few years of Mahomes' career, and with, the outstanding athletes and the play calling that they have, for a few years it worked. But then we saw last year in the Super Bowl with the Bucs, with the pressure that looked very similar to last night, where it was a ton of pressure on Mahomes on every throw. They were super physical off the line with Kelsey and with Tyreek, and they had two guys on Hill the whole game.
Right.
And it sort of, to me, looks like when you have the Bills are a great defense and the Bucs are a great defense. But it sort of, to me, looks like there's starting to be this blueprint of how you stop the Kansas City Chiefs and prevent them from outscoring you. And that's, to me, it's like, in even watching the game last night,
I would just really quick, I would say, the problem I have when people are like, oh, the blueprint of stopping this quarterback is to get pressure on them. I'm like, insert every quarterback of all time into that. Like, if you get pressure, that's why pass rushers get paid a lot of money. So, you get pressure on the quarterback, you're going to rattle him a little bit. One way a lot of people that are smarter than me say a way to negate pass rush is to be able to run the football.
Exactly.
Well, the Chiefs can't do that. And they can't get stops, which makes them even more one-dimensional because we have to pass because we're down 2 scores. The Chiefs' defense, the year they won the Super Bowl, was not great, but they were good. Mm-hmm. They would get stops. They'd get turnovers. You had Honey Badger get some turnovers. They had Chris Jones and Frank Clark. They have some players, which they still have, those 3 guys. But they're the worst defense in the NFL right now. And I'm statistically, I'm not going to go through every team. I know they're ranked 32nd in the league. In that there's been this way for probably the last 10 years I can think about. There's a team, the Raiders were like this last year, where it's like a good offense. I mean, Tony Romo's Cowboys were like this a lot. They were a great offense. The defense sucked. And then everyone's like, well, why aren't they, winning more games? Like, if you can't stop anyone, you're not going to win a lot of games. Mm-hmm. Like, defense is very important in the NFL. Yeah. And it's changed because so many of the rules affect the offense now, and people are like, oh, you want to have a good offense, and that's more important. It is to an extent, but you got to have at least a good defense. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's why, a lot of people, when it comes to the draft and, specifically with Aaron Rodgers, when they drafted Jordan Love, and, everyone's like, oh, he's pissed that they didn't take a wide receiver. I was like, I don't think it's positionally what he's pissed about. It's not a player to help him out now. If they took, which they did this past year, they took Eric Stokes, the corner out of Georgia. Mm-hmm. Like, oh my God, another guy that didn't take a receiver. I'm like, if this corner turns out to be really good, Aaron Rodgers is going to be happy with that.
Sure.
That's going to help him. Yeah. Having a good defense that gives him more chances, a defense that gets stops, that gives him, so we don't have to be perfect. I mean, you watch, a lot of these great offenses, they're not scoring touchdowns every single drive. Like occasionally, I watched the 49ers Cardinals game last week or this past weekend where, listen, that Cardinals offense is really good and Kyler Murray is really good. They had 4 drives in a row. They just, hey, we didn't execute. We had a false start, a holding penalty. Sometimes it just doesn't go perfectly. But now the reason the Cardinals are a contender is because now they play defense. It's like, well, now you don't need to. We're going to keep giving you opportunities. You're going to keep having that last drive because we're going to keep them there. Whereas the Chiefs right now, because that was kind of the case where, sometimes Mahomes would have to lead a last second drive or, now it's like, you're not going to get that because we're not stopping anybody right now.
Yep.
If from the start we're just like, hey, we need you to score 30, 40 points, it doesn't seem that daunting because they have a great offense. But when it's 10, 17 to 30 something and the defense is still, it's just demoralizing for a team. It's like we can't, and it's the same thing sometimes the opposite side when you have a good defensive team with no offense. You're getting stop after stop after stop, but the offense isn't scoring. It's just eventually you're going to break.
Yeah.
And eventually it's like, okay, well, you need to play complementary football. And I would say while the Chiefs were always powered by their pass offense, obviously, and Patrick Mahomes, is they at least played complementary football to an extent where the defense did help out. And it seems like they're not doing that now. Andy Reid's never really been, I feel like, great with the running game. He's always kind of been known as he's best, kind of pass game offensive guy. So just, they can't run the football and they can't play defense. It's not going to lead to a lot of wins in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the way that goes. And I think, which was the case, because a lot of times people compared the Chiefs to the Warriors. And similarly, where when you have a team like that, and then as time goes on, I mean, there's a lot of other teams that have improved greatly since then. When Mahomes started, there was no Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Now it looks like, are they even the best team in the West? Is he even the best quarterback in the AFC West? Josh Allen's taken that next step, and the Bills are a great team. I'm a big Sean McDermott fan, so now it seems like not only do they have the quarterback, but they have a good coach. It's like it's gonna be a problem. You have Lamar Jackson, getting better in Baltimore. I know they're hurt right now, but it also seems like when Mahomes was first coming up, the team they had to beat was the Patriots with an aging Brady, right? So it was like, well, when Brady's gone, the AFC is now Mahomes's.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, it's like, well, now there's some other really good teams in the AFC where it doesn't seem as easy of a path for them.
Yep.
So
there are a lot of good teams in the AFC. It's just a weird year of football so far where it's like I watch, on Sundays, and I don't see a team from week to week who is that much better than everybody else. Where it's like even the Cardinals right now. Yeah, it does. It's so quick. Yeah, and like we talked about, last week, is that like it's the NFL. So when a really good team barely beats a really bad team, it's like, hey, it's still the NFL.
Right.
So
there's just so much emotion that goes into it. Like the Niners playing the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they won, but they did not do very well on offense. Is it because the Niners have a great defense, or is it because the Cardinals just came off a game where they lit up the Rams and they're flying high and they just had a little bit of a letdown? It's just like that's just a human thing that happens. Like I think if you really paid attention to the entire league, how often a team will play really bad in one specific area one game and the next week, it's complete opposite. That's why I always hate when you're watching one of these standalone games, Sunday night, Monday night football, and like a team gets gashed on the ground, right? And then like somebody will look at who they're playing next. I'm like, oh my God, that team is going to run crazy on them. I'm like, actually, I think it's the opposite. That this team is just for a week is going to have to see how bad they looked running the ball. Now all their attention is going to go there. Yeah. I just think it just changes week to week, and that's why a lot of times a team plays this team in week 3, then a different team plays that same team in week 10. It's like, well, this team beat that team that team lost to. It's like they're kind of different teams at this point in the season. I think, but I think that's also kind of one of the exciting things about the league. But yeah, it does. It changes. Week to week.
So, are you on the Cowboys yet? Or are you still?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. They're a good football team.
Because I was thinking in the car on the way
I will say they're a good football team. No, and I think they're definitely a contender. I was wrong. I feel wrong about that. The last 2 weeks was Giants and Eagles, which I don't think are. Again, I'm not going to go back on saying that there's still good wins. I will say the only thing I have no problem admitting that it looks like an unbelievable offense. I think Dak is definitely elevated into the elite status. They have weapons everywhere.
Can run the ball.
Yeah, I'm not as necessarily sold on their defense quite yet. I think they've kind of played some not great offenses. I mean, they played the Bucs and lost. The Bucs have a great offense. I thought the Chargers game was a lot more. The Chargers lost it. And the Chargers had 2 touchdowns taken off the board of like stupid motion penalties, like on the goal line. That then they would have scored 30-something points and, probably won that game. So I still am not 100% sold that defense. Diggs is obviously playing great and Parsons looks great, but the defense as a whole, I'm not sold against the upper echelon offenses, the Cardinals, they had to play the Rams. Just looking at all the teams in the NFC, I'm not necessarily sold on. But yeah, they're definitely a contender. They're a little bit better than I thought. I stand by. I think Mike McCarthy is not necessarily a great coach, but Dak Prescott looks amazing.
And to bring it kind of full circle, we'll see how much of your lack of confidence in McCarthy is going to affect this football team in the season.
Well, they've already had a couple games that they've won where the takeaway from a lot of people are like, yeah, but what was Mike McCarthy doing there? So
we'll see.
And I will say I don't know if I've fully committed to it. I'm ready to commit to Justin Herbert's the best quarterback in football.
Fully committed.
Yeah.
He looks good, man.
I won't there's a difference. I won't even say best quarter. I'd say if I had the number one pick of any quarter, that's
you're taking Herbert.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the consensus among people who played this game for a long time.
I think Kyler Murray also has a claim for that, and Dak Prescott also has a claim for that.
But it's like when you listen to a lot of former quarterbacks who are now commentating, or guys that have been around, the coaches who have been around the game for a long time, when they're watching like him play right now, they're all saying the same thing, that you're saying right now, and so it's been fun to get to watch him.
He's so good.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how good he is.
Yeah.
All right. That was a long episode. I appreciate it if you stuck with us. Appreciate Jake, you coming in. Remember to follow us along everywhere. Subscribe, do all that stuff. We really appreciate it. Keep giving us your feedback of, stuff maybe you want our takes on or whatnot. I thought we talked about a lot of stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed it. That's all I got. Jake, you got anything else?
That's it, man. Thanks for having me.
You're not going to help with the outro at all. You're not going to say anything to help with the outro.
Nope.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Thanks for listening, guys.
All right.